So thank you everyone for joining us today. We are very pleased to be able to welcome Kelsey Topi from the University of Michigan Healthy Medical Ergonomics team to talk to our campus about what it means to set up your home office in a way that's comfortable and that works for you. So we do have a presentation that she is going to go through. She's got the questions that have been submitted ahead of time. I am going to keep my eye on the chat box as well in case any questions come in throughout the course of the presentation. And then of course, if you've got questions while you're watching or even afterwards, feel free to reach out to me and we'll make sure that the questions do get back to Kelsey. So without any further delay, welcome Kelsey to the virtual Dearborn campus. We're happy to have you here and I'll turn it over to you.
All righty. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you everyone who is participating today. I think this is really great that you all kind of took the time out of your day to kind of invest in yourself, hopefully, to improve your comfort and efficiency in your workspace. So thanks again to everyone who submitted the questions as well. They were all excellent questions. I'm going to cover some of them in the presentation and others I'm going to kind of cover at the end. And if there's any question that I didn't interpret correctly, or if there's something else that comes up, please reach out to me at the end if you don't feel comfortable answering the question during the presentation, and I would love to follow up with you on that. So at the end of this presentation, my hope is that you all can take away at least one useful tip or strategy that has a positive impact on your day. If anybody's been sitting for longer than a half an hour at this point, please take a minute, stand up, stretch, move around, kind of get the blood flowing. The first few slides are just going to be talking, so you don't even have to look at them. Let's see. We'll advance here. All righty. So our objectives for today. The first one is to understand why it's important to for your workspace to work for you. So we all come in many different shapes, sizes, and one workspace does not work for everyone. So depending on kind of your physical attributes, you need a specific setup for your body's needs. So typically when I work with clients, I go out and do an assessment. And a lot of times they're not even aware that making a simple adjustment to their workspace or even just moving around more is going to help kind of their comfort and productivity. So some of the things that you might change aren't big per se, but they could have a really big impact once you initiate them. So next, let's see. Another big one for ergonomics is identifying risk factors and for injury and how to reduce them. So we're going to get into that a little bit more in a moment. I'm going to teach you kind of how to apply some basic ergonomic assessment skills in your workspace. So I'm going to teach you the work that I typically do, and hopefully you can identify some of the problems, and then we're going to implement some solutions to improve some of your discomfort and inefficiency in your workspace. And then we're going to take a look around your home to see what is available that could improve the fit of your workspace based on kind of what we identify in your assessment. And then lastly, I just want to mention that this presentation is providing general information. It's not a substitute for medical advice. So if you're having any sort of physical issue, please consult your physician or other qualified provider for appropriate diagnosis and treatment. All right. So in recent months, our workspace shifted from the conventional office, which was, looking back now, right, controlled and nice, because we had everything that we needed, to this home office where maybe we didn't have the most ideal setup. So as a result, we found ourselves working at the kitchen table, the couch, from bed, at the kitchen counter, using a card table, which I'm currently using at the moment because I'm in the basement. And some of us have home offices as well. So just kind of a quick shift in our workspace. So not only a change in the physical space, but also kind of what is around us. So many people have new coworkers as well. So we're sharing our offices with our household members. One challenge is we're trying to work where we're also living, eating, and sleeping, which can make it difficult to set boundaries between work and other life. And then there's just new distractions and other environmental factors that we're dealing with that we didn't have to deal with as much in the physical office. So what is ergonomics? It's an applied science concerned with designing and arranging the things that people use so that the people and the things interact most efficiently and safely. So there's definitely multi-components that kind of come together to have this efficient, smooth interaction. So we're going to take a look at many of those areas. And so what is the goal? Trying to find that work-life balance and an environment that works for us. Okay, so many employees seek out ergonomic support after they've seen their provider for an injury or pain, which may be considered a musculoskeletal disorder. So musculoskeletal disorders, or MSDs, are injuries or disorders that affect the muscles, the tendons, ligaments, bones, joints, nerves, and the spinal discs. Symptoms include back or neck pain, carpal tunnel syndrome, tendinitis, arthritis, sprains, strains, and tears. Sorry, those are common MSDs. Symptoms of those things are pain, stiffness, swelling, and dull aches. So, to be proactive, the most important thing we can do is to understand what the risk factors for MSDs are and what we can do to reduce them to prevent injuries or discomfort. And again, please see your doctor if you're having any sort of symptom or disorder, pain that's impacting you for appropriate diagnosis and treatment. So those common risk factors include repetition, so performing the same motion over and over a period of time. Contact stress, so when we apply force or pressure through an area of the body. This often occurs in the case of carpal tunnel. You get some contact stress through this area of your wrist on a hard surface, and you develop those symptoms. So force, when we generate extreme force to perform an action, and awkward posture. So when we put excessive stress or strain on the body, anytime we're outside this neutral body position. So these are risk factors that could put us at risk for a musculoskeletal disorder, especially if more than one risk factor is happening at the same time. Okay, so we want to avoid scenarios where the risk factors, such as the awkward postures, contact stress, repetition, and force, are present as a result of the environment not being a good fit for our body. The big thing I want to emphasize is that our body should be in a neutral position at all times. So I'm going to use this picture here and kind of walk you through what a good setup at your seated workstation should be so that your body is neutral and the risk factors are minimized. So, oops, I always forget these little lines pop up. So you should be able to see here, we have 3 lines on our drawing. The first thing you want to do when you're sitting in your chair is adjust the chair to fit your body. So you should adjust the height of your chair so that your feet are flat on the floor. Your hips are slightly higher than your knees, and you have about 90-degree angles at your hips, your knees, and your ankles. So that is a good seat height for your body. Next, you want to sit all the way back in the chair so that your backrest is supported by the chair. We want your spine to be kind of straight and to have some support behind it. So next, your office chair may have a seat pan, so that's the part you're sitting on, that slides forward or back. So if you do have this option, it's not common on a lot of home chairs, it should be adjusted so you can slide 2 fingers behind your knee before feeling the front of your seat. So you can kind of adjust your chair in and out so that you have that correct position. If your chair has a fixed seat depth, you want to sit all the way back and then slide your fingers behind your knee. And if you can't squeeze 2 fingers in there, so that would mean that the front of your seat is touching the back of your knee, you may need to add a pillow behind your backrest so that the circulation to your leg isn't kind of cut off by the front of your seat and you still have some support behind you. So I'm going to show you a picture in a little bit of what that means. So that's, so far we've adjusted our seat height and our seat pan depth. Just making sure that I'm not missing anything. Next, your office chair may have some other adjustments such as the backrest angle, lumbar position, or tension. So at this point, you would definitely adjust any of those options if you have them to your comfort. Your backrest angle should be so that you're supported in this upright position. Lumbar tension, kind of just to your comfort, like as if you were in a vehicle. Same thing with position. Your lumbar support should kind of be in the small of your back. Next, so we should have your seat pretty well adjusted for your spine at this point. So next, you want to relax your arms and shoulders, bend your elbows to a 90-degree angle. And at this point, you should be able to adjust the height of your armrest so that your forearms are supported when you're at rest. Your armrest should be just kind of slightly below the height of your elbows. And then if you have a width and a pivot adjustment on your armrest, you want to bring those in as much as possible or as much as you need and pivot them so that your arms are supported with your elbows touching your body. So you're in this nice neutral tight position. So there's no armrest on this chair here, but you could imagine having an armrest kind of right in this area is what you would want. Let's see, let me just advance here a little bit. So we have our feet flat on the floor, that 1 to 2 finger widths of clearance behind your knees. Here's your 90-degree angle at your elbows. Okay. All right, so now this is that ideal height for your keyboard and mouse to be. I know that was one of the questions. Where should my keyboard or my desk height be? So you could, if you want, measure from the ground up to your elbow, that distance, and subtract about an inch, and that should be your desk height, or you can just eyeball it, kind of go by comfort. So elbows at your sides, hands slightly below the height of your elbows. That is right where your keyboard and mouse should be. Okay, so now we're going to adjust you and your chair to your desk. So we should have kind of your ideal keyboard mouse height. So now you have to kind of do if this, then this, if not that, then that type of a thing. So if you're lucky and your keyboard and mouse are right where they should be, you get to just ignore the next couple things. If your desk is higher than where your hand should, if your desk is higher than where your hands are, your ideal height, you can see if you can raise your chair up at all to kind of get that, get your seat at the correct height so your hands are at the appropriate height. But remember, if you bring your seat up, you also need to bring the floor up that same distance with a footrest so that your feet are still supported by the ground or the surface. If your seat doesn't raise up, some options include sitting on a blanket or pillow if it's a couple inches. And if your desk is significantly higher than what it should be, you may need to consider coming up with a lower height option for your keyboard and mouse. And we're going to talk about that soon too. So just something to keep in mind. Now this is typically something that doesn't happen, but it is possible that your desk is lower than what you need. So you may be able to raise up your whole desk with risers depending on the kind of style of your desk, or just elevate your keyboard and mouse with like a book or binder, something like that. We're going to talk more about some of those household options in a minute. So we're just kind of identifying what the problems are at this point. So the keyboard tray is recommended if your desk is way too high for your body's needs or your chair can't go up to the right height. And then a footrest is recommended if you do end up raising your seat height up and you need to bring the floor up to keep your 90-degree angles at your hips, knees, and ankles. Okay. So we're going to move back to our arms. So your wrists should stay straight and they should be just slightly below the height of your elbows. Another important thing is to make sure that your wrists are not in contact with any hard surface on your desk. So you want to minimize the chance of developing carpal tunnel syndrome. All right, so next we're going to move on to your monitors. I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of the eye stuff in a minute, but for now I'm just going to kind of give you the basics of where things should be positioned. So when you're sitting back in your chair and you look straight out, your line of sight should be within the top inch or two of your screen, your natural point of looking. And that's because our gaze is about 15 degrees below horizontal. So that puts you looking about the center of your screen most of the time. You want your monitors to be positioned at arm's reach distance away. So too close or too far could result in eye strain and discomfort. And then if you're using multiple monitors, kind of depending on how you use them, you want to position them so that most of what you're using is directly in front of you. So if you have two screens and you use them 50-50, you want your two screens to be touching it, kind of line up with your nose and fanned out like a V kind of towards you. So most of what you're seeing is within this site. If you're like 70-30, 70% of that dominant screen should be in front of you and just 30% of the other one. So you want to avoid scenarios where you're twisting your head for prolonged periods to see your material, because that can result in neck strain and discomfort. So we did height of your monitor, distance, and position. Okay, good. So I think we have everything set up. I don't think I've missed anything with your workspace setup, but if I did, please holler. Now the important thing to do is to not stay in your seat for too long. So we recommend that you get up and move for at least 2 to 3 minutes, once or twice per hour. So you shouldn't be sitting at your desk for longer than an hour at a time, because that is just way too long. You need to get up and move for at least 2 to 3 minutes each hour. If you get up every half an hour, even better, but at least once per hour is good. And I know that's a question that someone had too. So once you're all set up and comfortable, we're going to make you get up and move around, because sitting for too long is just not a good thing. I also want to mention standing workstations. Let me advance here a little bit. Sorry, guys. So eye level for the top of your screen. Oh, here we did forget something. So people using multi-lens glasses, especially bifocals and trifocals, your screens will need to be lower so that when you look out and you're using that lower portion of your lens, everything's in the right position for you. So having your screen up at eye level won't apply. You're going to have to lower it down a little bit, because we want your neck to stay straight and your eyes just to move up and down a little bit. So sorry about skipping that one for you. I do want to talk about standing desks. So everything that I mentioned as far as position of equipment applies from the waist up for standing desks. So your elbows should still stay close to your body. Your wrists should stay straight and positioned slightly below the height of your elbows. Monitor still up at eye level unless you have those multifocal lenses. But the thing with standing desk is you should only stand for 5 to 10 minutes, once or twice per hour. So just like prolonged sitting isn't good, prolonged standing isn't good either. When you stand, you get a lot of force through your hips, your knees, your back, your feet. So really moving around. If you can sit a little bit, stand a little bit, walk each hour, that is best. But standing desks that you stand at all day long are really, it's not a good practice. Okay. So again, just moving every 30 to 60 minutes for at least 2 to 3 minutes. So if you have to set yourself a timer, I suggest that, or a lot of smartwatches, fitness trackers will tell you to get up and move. So just listening to them a lot of times. I know it's hard to get up and move when you're really sucked into your work, but taking that time to take care of your body is very important. So now we're going to talk about evaluating your workspace. So it's really challenging to see yourself while you're working. So if you happen to have someone else in your home with you, ask them to take some candid pictures of you throughout the day. And then you can kind of take a peek at those and see what your tendencies are when you're in your work and not really paying attention to what you're doing. If you're alone, you could prop your phone, use a timer, get pictures in some capacity. And then take a look at those pictures and see what you notice. So I have a few pictures here we're going to talk about. So, so I'm kind of comparing back to that drawing I showed you a little while ago. So when I trace a line from the ear to the hip here, you can see that it's definitely curved and forward. So the spine is not straight. And the weight of the person's head actually puts a ton of force on this upper back region. So these muscles are working extremely hard right now to support them. So it's not a good thing. I can see that there isn't much contact between their back and the chair here, so they're not supported. Here I can see a point of contact stress. So as I mentioned earlier, we want to avoid having kind of soft tissue areas such as the forearm or the wrist in contact with a hard desk edge. Let's see. Now I also can see that their feet are crossed and tucked behind the chair. So we want to avoid that just from a circulation standpoint. Also, having your feet kind of tucked up behind you is going to kind of propel your body forward as a way to balance. So really want to keep yourself your feet flat on the floor so that your body stays in that neutral position. And then just another angle here. We're going to look at this right arm. We can see that the wrist is deviated out to the side, so it's not straight. Another point of contact stress. Now this one is on a soft gel pad, which is slightly better, but still something that we want to minimize if possible. Also a point of contact stress on that armrest of the chair. So when you're using your mouse or typing, your arm should just be kind of hovering over the arm support. You shouldn't be pressing in at all to that armrest. So if you can, adjust the height of your armrest so that you're not putting a lot of force through is recommended. And then finally, we're going to look at this person's wrist. So you can see the arms are kind of internally rotated towards the center of the body, and then the wrists are kind of deviating back and forth, side to side to use the keyboard. So again, just awkward postures here. So what can we do to help? So taking a look around your home, what do we have available? So pillows. These are a great way to add cushion to a seat, to add back support to your chair, or arm support if you're sitting in a chair where the armrests are not adjustable toward your body and they're too wide. So you can kind of stuff the pillows next to you and use those as some arm supports. Rolled towels or blankets. So blankets, as I mentioned earlier, can be used to kind of raise your seat height up if your chair doesn't go high enough. Rolled towels are a good lumbar support if your chair is lacking in that area. And let's see, moving on here. So other household items such as a stack of books, the ring binder, cake pan, box, or storage tote are great ways to raise the height of your monitor if that's necessary, to add a footrest, even to raise the height of your keyboard and mouse if that's something that you need. TV tray or ironing board. So these are my two solutions if you're sitting at a desk that's too high for you and your chair and you need a lower surface. So you may be able to find a TV tray that's the right height for you. Or actually I used two TV trays kind of turned long ways and then straddled the two legs for a while. I was awaiting my final desk just because that was more comfortable. I needed a little bit more space. So just kind of getting creative. And if you can find, something cheap and if you have to cut the legs off or have someone who can use a saw, things like that, cut the legs off, don't be afraid to kind of think creatively with things you have available. The ironing board. So typically these are pretty adjustable. I've seen them used for both sitting and standing workstations for various people. This is also a solution I tried and was able to use with pretty good success, kind of in a pinch. External keyboard and mouse. So I highly recommend anybody who's trying to use a laptop for their work to get an external keyboard and mouse. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in a second, but inherently laptops are compact for the purpose of being portable, but that also makes our bodies have to be compact to use them, which is not good from an ergonomic standpoint. External monitor or television. So again, if you're using only a laptop and you need a bigger screen or a second screen, highly recommend that you have some type of second input device so that you're not struggling to see and that you have everything available to you readily. So craft foam, another great way to add cushion to your chair if it's lacking in that area. Kitchen or shelf liner is a great way to make your surfaces non-slip. So if you have, your footrest on a wood floor and wants to slide around, kind of put some shelf liner beneath it, and that's going to give you that anti-skid for it. And then finally, bungee cord or belt can be great to secure a pillow or rolled towel or whatever extra supports you have in your chair in place so that you're not constantly readjusting them. And I'm sure there's other things out there, but these are just some of the most commonly used things that I've seen kind of from the home to make your workspace more user-friendly.
Hey, Kelsey, there
Yes.
was a question in the chat that asked whether or not is it good or bad? Is it bad if you have a chair that doesn't have the armrests on the side? Is that something you can speak to?
Yeah, so it is good to have arm support on a chair, just because Our arms are active all day long, typing and using the mouse. And so it's good to periodically have a place where you can kind of come back to your base and relax and take stress and strain off this area. So there might be people out there who use armless chairs and have no trouble. But I would say if you have any type of like upper neck, shoulder, back discomfort, adding arm support could be very helpful for you. Um, and actually, this picture here I'm going to talk about, I'm sitting in like a kitchen chair without arm support, which I used this workstation for quite a while. And I did notice that my arms were tight, and I would periodically like rest them on my lap, but it's almost too low. Um, I would say an armless chair, if your desk is too high, is going to have you kind of reaching up and out for your input devices, and that could definitely cause strain on your upper back and neck. So, dependent on the person, I think arm support is good, but you also could be totally fine without it. Okay, so a little before and after of a workstation. So, this is actually me here on my laptop at like a dining room table. So, as you can see, I'm looking down at my screen, so my neck is definitely flexed. I have that kind of curved line too from my ear down to my hip. My arms are close to my body with my elbows at my sides, but my elbows are bent more than 90 degrees. I'm kind of coming up. My wrists are anchoring on the edge of that hard laptop, and then my hands are doing that side to side movement. So this is really not a good thing. And it's not comfortable because I did it for a little while. So looking around my home, able to come up with the ironing board solution. So getting the keyboard and mouse down to the correct height for my body, added an external keyboard and mouse so I wasn't using the laptop input devices, elevated the laptop up on a box and a couple pieces of wood to get it to eye level. And then I was able to take just a regular pillow in its case and slide it over the back of my chair, um, which was nice because it stayed in place at that point for a little bit of extra support. And then you can't really see, but I did have an extra bit of like a kitchen towel in here for a little more lumbar support. The other thing that's not in this picture I added was a just a cushion from IKEA, just to add a little cushion because sitting on a wooden chair all day is not the most comfortable for your bottom. So pretty low cost solutions that were readily available to make a workstation better. Now, this workstation again doesn't have arm supports and it really isn't possible to add them. So that was a disadvantage, but it was something I was able to kind of work through. All right, so next we have the individual I showed you earlier. We made some adjustments here. So we added, again, just a throw pillow behind the back here to add some support because you can see the chair, it reclines back quite a bit and it's not adjustable. So this gave him that contact there. He's actually also sitting on a pillow that you can't see. So that raised the seat height up a little bit, that this contact stress here wasn't quite as significant as it was before. Also moving the monitors a little bit closer so that the neck didn't strain coming forward. And also just being mindful of posture. So the tendency here is to just kind of really get into kind of his work and focus. So being mindful kind of to keep the chin tucked in and the back straight is another big thing that we had to work with. All right, so some other tips. There was a question about making a small workspace work for you. And my best recommendation for that is to kind of prioritize what items you have in your space. So, reducing clutter in your workspace, keeping frequently used items within reach. Thinking about how often you use things. So, things you use often, like your keyboard and mouse, should be in your primary work zone. So, that is your elbows touching your body. If you kind of move your arms back and forth like windshield wipers, whatever you're using often is right within that reach. So you're not overreaching at all for it. Secondary zone is maybe reaching with a straight arm, but you can still get to what you need. So things you use occasionally, your water bottle, maybe a phone, notebook, things like that. And then things you rarely use, you might have to get up to get. So keeping those a little bit further away so that they're not cluttering up your desk or being a distraction. So just kind of evaluating your space and prioritizing what needs to be close to you. As far as distractions, noise canceling headphones are a great way if auditory distractions are a barrier to you. If you are on the phone often and you have to type at the same time, using a headphones or a speakerphone option on your phone instead of cradling the phone with your shoulder, because this posture over a long period of time is definitely going to result in strain at your neck. So taking care in that area. Looking at your light source, considering your light source, and then adjusting it as necessary to reduce glare and eye strain. So this was another question too, as far as what types of lighting is good. So natural lighting is good, as well as what they call warm lighting. Um, you want to position your computer so that you are perpendicular to the lights, to like a natural light source, like your window. So instead of facing the window directly, you want the window to be at your side so that you're getting that natural light, but yet it's not coming directly at you or directly kind of over you. And then also using task lighting if you're referencing a lot of papers or things at your desk so that that is illuminated, but yet you're not, the light's not coming at your face. The other thing is to kind of adjust the settings on your screen, the font sizes to reduce glare and increase the font size if you're straining to see. Um, for eye strain and fatigue, making sure that you're following the 20-20-20 rule. So this is every 20 minutes looking at something positioned 20 feet away for 20 seconds. So a lot of times we kind of get digital eye strain from the work that we're doing. So blinking often, using the 20-20 rule, all good strategies to kind of help our eyes. There was a question about the blue light filter glasses, and I can't speak to how effective they are, but I can say that there's a lot of other things that contribute to kind of eye discomfort when you're using technology. And it's not always the blue light that's the factor. So looking at something for too long or your eyes getting dry or things like that. So really practicing good eye care, 20-20 rule, adjusting your settings, looking at your light sources, those are all good ways. And I would say if you have more questions about the blue light filter glasses, to follow up with your eye doctor and kind of see what they recommend for your needs. And again, adjusting your screen or your Zoom settings to increase the font size if you're using a small monitor so that you're not straining to see. And again, screen brightness, so increasing or decreasing it depending on the room that you're in. And then most importantly is that you just keep moving. So avoid sitting for too long, avoid standing for too long. You really can't move enough. So again, sit for no longer than 30 to 60 minutes, stand for no longer than 15 minutes at a time, but you could stand once or twice per hour, and try to move around for at least 2 to 3 minutes an hour. I know this is challenging, especially when we're in our homes and small environments, especially as the weather is getting colder. But even just, I've seen on kind of the news, people in New York apartments running in their tiny spaces just because they're, needing to move. So it can be done. It might seem silly to walk laps in your home, but you got to do what you got to do at this point. And moving will definitely not hurt you. And I mentioned this earlier, but just using an alarm or timer to stay accountable, to help you kind of get up and initiate those rest breaks. It's really easy to get kind of sucked into the work that we're doing and to not have a place to go per se, to just stay at our desk. But our bodies were not designed to sit, like we need to move. So keep moving. All righty. So if anyone is having additional ergonomic support that they need help with, we are here from both a preventative and a medical standpoint. So if you're having, oh, I just, want a little help with my space, preventative, if you're having pain or discomfort or things like that, you'll need to see your provider and get a referral. So our website will kind of talk more about this process, which I've included it below, and I can also share it at the end. We have a Qualtrics form that you can use to request a medical assessment. And also there's information on there to get in contact with the Ergo representative at Dearborn to get a consultation there. I'm going to move actually into your questions right now, but I did include our email at the bottom here. So these are the questions that I received and I haven't addressed so far in the presentation. So funding, someone asked if there was any funding options available for ergonomic enhancements in the home. And no, at this time, there is no funding options available. For individuals who are under physician's care for a condition and it qualifies as a medical, I'm sorry, as it qualifies for an accommodation under the ADA, um, with the medical ergonomics consultation, there are times where we do recommend the department obtain equipment for you that's pertinent to your medical need. So that would be the one exception where things do happen. With the home environment right now, it would be up to the department to decide if you're able to use the item in your home or if you would need to wait until you return to the office. So the next questions were about reducing neck, shoulder, and back pain. Um, I would say with this, just making sure that you're in a neutral body position. So if your keyboard and mouse are too high, you're going to be reaching up and out. Your arms are going to be doing their work. Your muscles are engaged all the time to support them. And that's a lot of times where our back, shoulder, upper back, shoulder, neck pain occurs. So I would check the height of your keyboard and mouse, make sure your elbows are able to stay close to your body and that you're working in that primary work zone with your keyboard and mouse. And that should help you there. For neck strain specifically as well, being mindful of kind of your neck position when you're using your screen. So if you're kind of over here for long periods of time, you may start to feel discomfort on the sides of your neck from that position that you're in. Alrighty. And then as far as low back discomfort, again, just making sure your spine is in that neutral position, 90-degree angles at your hips, ankles, knees, back supported upright in the chair. And that should help with that discomfort. Another question was about improving posture with different apps that are out there. So I have personally not used any of the apps or wearable devices. I have worked with a few clients who have used them, and some like them and some kind of just find them a nuisance. So they work by way of biofeedback. So they kind of detect when you're not in a neutral position and they vibrate or make a noise or something like that to indicate to you that you need to kind of correct your posture. So when we get consumed in a task and our environment's not kind of set up to facilitate a good posture, we oftentimes will slouch and get into poor postures. And it's hard to recognize this when you're distracted. So having a source of feedback is very helpful. And it's also hard to see yourself while you're working, so you can't always kind of know what you're doing. If you didn't want to go this route, but you wanted to be kind of aware of what you're doing, just doing brief check-ins with yourself, kind of checking, is my abs engaged? Am I sitting back? Is my chin tucked to my, neutral? Things like that. So kind of adding that into your workday can kind of help to make those corrections. I had several questions about specific equipment recommendations for chairs, standing desks, and lighting. So it is really hard to give specific recommendations on chairs, especially because we come in so many different sizes. But I did do some research a while back on different kind of chairs for the home office environment at kind of a budget friendly price. So I would be happy to share that resource with anybody who would like it. But basically what you're looking for is something that has adjustments. So the chair should definitely be height adjustable up and down. If you have long legs, I would suggest, or even short legs, I would suggest looking for a chair where the seat can be slid forward or back. So depending on the length of your femur, your thigh bone, you want to be able to move that seat back and forth. If you're an average height person, you may be able to get by with a fixed height chair. It really just depends. It's also important that your armrests are height adjustable because depending on kind of your body's ratio, you want to be able to move those up and down so that your forearms are supported at that 90-degree angle when you're sitting. And especially for petite individuals looking for a chair where the armrests are width adjustable so they come in close to your body. Otherwise, your armrests are going to be way out to the sides and they're not really going to provide you any support. So that's not ideal either. There are different chairs out there, like there's larger chairs and petite chairs. So just trying to match it up with your body is recommended. It's also good if you can to try the chair out before you buy it. So some stores, some stores do have chairs, Staples or Office Max that you can test out beforehand. I did actually buy a chair without knowing, and it worked out. But you want to make sure you have a return policy in case it doesn't. And then other adjustments on chairs, so like the backrest position, the lumbar option, lumbar tension, again, all options just kind of depending on your body's needs are things I would look for. But looking for a chair that's adjustable is going to be your best bet. As far as standing desks, so something to consider is kind of how much space you need for your work surface and making sure that the desk is going to accommodate that. Considering the weight of your items, the weight of the desk, and how you have to lift it up and down, if it's manual or power, something to keep in mind. So we don't recommend that you stand for a long time. So if you're using it, you should be moving up and down often. We want it to be um, convenient for you, but also not something that's going to cause injury. And the other important thing with standing desks is a lot of them sit on top of an existing desk. So if your desk is already too high for you, you had a standing desk on top. When you go to sit down, your keyboard and mouse are likely going to be about an inch higher than they were before. So if your chair doesn't go up or you didn't need that extra inch, that's going to be a disadvantage when you're sitting. Now we should be sitting more than we're standing. So making sure that your sitting workstation is set up well for you, I would say is kind of a better investment. And then just making sure that you're moving often. So I wouldn't say standing desks are the answer, but a good seated workstation and moving often is definitely recommended. For a standing workstation, one thing that I found is sometimes like our dressers or yeah, it's not really countertop, something a little higher than that in our home could be used to kind of set the laptop on to get your screen at the right height. If you're doing like a Zoom meeting like this, where you're not typing or interacting at all, just to kind of give you some flexibility. So kind of look around your home, walk around your home, kind of stand at different surfaces and see, like, are my elbows like at my sides? Can I type here? Can I put a box on this to get my laptop up to the right height to make this a standing workstation is necessary? So having some kind of flexible spaces in your home that you could use at different points in time is recommended as well. And that'll help too, just kind of changing it up. Like, I know it gets pretty boring sitting in the same space, especially if you're, on your own. But being able to move around and have different options can kind of add a little excitement to the workday, especially when we're at our homes. And then as far as lighting, I do not have any specific equipment recommendations for lighting. Um, if you're, like I said, if you're using like reading at your desk, you want to have good task lighting so that your information is illuminated. You want to avoid lighting that's directly above you or directly behind you because that could add glare. If it's early in the morning and it's dark out, you want to have the lighting around you just to be kind of gentle, if you will. So nothing that's like too bright. Maybe a couple different sources of light that are dim. Options to dim or increase the brightness are also kind of nice, just depending on your body's needs at that time. Okay. So distractions. I talked about this a little bit before. So noise canceling headphones are good for auditory distractions. If there's visual distractions, kind of strategically placing your desk or workstation so that you're not seeing those as often. So maybe you're not facing a wall, or you're in a room where you can shut the door. Maybe you go to the basement if you have that option, things like that. They also do have like different types of kind of barriers that you could use, almost like a changing, like a, I don't know what they're called, but anyway, like a makeshift dressing room or something like that, where you could add that to your workspace to kind of minimize some of the distractions. One other thing, as far as keeping focus, actually sometimes moving around and changing positions almost recharges us in a sense to stay focused when we're at our desk. So if you're at the desk for hours on end and you're having a hard time focusing, that could also just be your body's way of saying that you need to get up and move around. So definitely incorporating movement into your routine is important. And then eye strain and blue light filters. I mentioned the blue light filters earlier, and then for eye strain, just good screen habits can mitigate some of the symptoms. So 20/20 rule, making sure that you're blinking often, checking your monitor distance. If it's too far or too close, you could experience eye strain. And then looking at your lighting. So avoiding situations where you have a lot of glare on your screen, and your screen should just be comfortable to view. And again, persisting eye discomfort, please see your provider for that. And then the best lighting to reduce eye strain. So again, warm light is typically recommended. Natural light is considered warm light. And then softly lit room environments when it's dark outside. That's the word I was looking for earlier. Okay, and then psychological well-being. There was a few questions on this, and it is definitely important in the situation that we are in right now. So recognizing that this pandemic has brought about a ton of stress and trauma for all of us, instead of kind of dwelling on the things that we can't control, just trying to refocus our energy on what we can control, so that we have kind of that sense of control again. Coping strategies are like necessary to help with adversity, and sometimes the coping strategies that we used or the ones we used last year are not effective for this. So kind of being willing to expand your toolbox to find kind of what it is now that works for you. Another thing that I like to do, in addition to recognizing all the challenges that sometimes just feel so heavy and prevalent on us, is to identify 3 positive things each day that kind of happen. And this can be challenging sometimes, but it definitely helps to kind of refocus and recenter what is happening in our world, especially when there's so much uncertainty, unpredictability, and loss. Another important thing is just to try to set small, realistic, attainable goals for yourself. So nothing over the top. And then recognize yourself when you do accomplish these things. So it could be a goal around just moving more, or getting adequate rest for yourself, or finding a way to connect with other people, especially when doing that in person is so challenging. So I did reach out to a colleague from the, excuse me, I'm going to mess up where she's from. Office of Resiliency. Sorry, hold on, let me see. I want to say it correctly. Program of Resiliency and Wellbeing Services, just to kind of see what they had available. And she wanted me to share this with you all. So the Faculty and Staff Counseling and Consultation Office does provide some services that are confidential and no cost, related to mental health counseling, trauma, grief, and loss, critical incident support, supervisory consultation, support groups, and educational presentations and programs. So I've included their website, contact information here. And then in addition to that, there is also some resources through M-Healthy related to well-being. So that website is below. A lot of good things on there that can be helpful. One other thing that she shared, that was kind of relevant to someone's question about not being able to move around as much in the home. Her suggestion was to build in what's called commute time in your work from home routine. So typically when you're commuting to the office, you're no longer doing that, but you can replace it with something else. So something healthy and enjoyable at the start and end of each day that can kind of bring you calmness, presence, and can also help to kind of set that boundary between work and life when it's all happening in the same place. Those lines get extremely blurred when you don't physically leave a place. Other things that can be helpful from a psychological standpoint is just getting outside, even with the weather cold, bundle up and get out there and just kind of experience nature. That can help a lot with stress. Making sure that we're moving often, and then just pausing to be present when anxiety is building can be helpful. And I do have a, let's see, I'll have to share it later on. But anyway, it's a link for kind of a meditation, take a break app that is very helpful if you're looking to add something new in your routine to kind of help with coping and things like that. All right, and that is all I have. I thank you all for attending. I hope I was able to answer most of your questions, and if I wasn't, please ask them now.
Actually, Kelsey, we had a couple of comments in the chat
Okay,
box.
okay.
Someone asked, is crossing your legs bad for your posture? That was the first one. And then,
Okay.
sorry, I missed what you said about this, but where should your wrists be relative to your elbows?
Okay.
And then
I'm
just,
going to stop you for a second. Can I address them? Because I'm terrible at remembering.
yes, yes,
Let's do
please
one at a
do.
time. Okay.
Yes.
So the first one. So crossing your legs. So when our legs are crossed and bent, you're restricting circulation in that area. So it's really not a good idea to sit on a leg for one, or to sit cross-legged or things like that. So sitting with your knees bent at 90 degrees is really best. Um, Crossing your ankles too and kind of tucking them behind your knees, I mentioned earlier, is going to kind of affect your body's center of gravity balance. And if your legs are behind you, you're not supported. And so to compensate from that, your whole body's going to want to come forward. So now we're looking at increased stress on the hips and low back. We're probably going to see some weird neck positions because we're kind of different there. So those 90-degree angles really are your best friend in terms of having good neutral posture and minimizing discomfort and strain. Okay, I'm ready.
And then the next one, where should your wrists be relative to your elbows?
Okay, so when you're sitting at your computer workstation, shoulders relaxed, elbows at your sides, touching your body, wrists slightly below the height of your elbows. So, like maybe 1 inch below the height of your elbows. You don't want them higher because then you're going to be getting um, reduced circulation at the elbow, as well as maybe contact stress on that hard desk edge. So, kind of a slightly below is a good spot for them, and then straight relative to your forearm. So we don't want your wrist bent up or down or deviating too much in and out. So neutral is what we're looking for.
Awesome. And then just a couple of comments. Some folks use yoga blocks for footrests.
Mhm.
And someone else said that they keep an under the desk cycler, which helps keeps legs moving.
I like them both. Very good. I should add the yoga blocks. That's a really good one.
Yeah, I think so too. That was all I can see in the chat. So if anyone else
Okay.
has anything, please unmute yourself. At this point, we've got a couple minutes left. If you want to unmute yourself and just ask a question. Don't think I see anyone. I'm looking through the participants.
I have to say, your
There's
questions
a,
were
co-
all
yeah,
great.
there's a comment here or a question. Why is standing for only 10 minutes best practice?
So when you're just standing stationary, think about yourself in the grocery store line. You're just kind of staying there. You're going to get antsy. You're going to want to move around. So just standing still is not good. Sometimes standing workstations, you might have a yoga block per se, or something that you could kind of put your foot up on to shift your weight off of your feet from time to time and just kind of keep moving. That is recommended. So that's just what the evidence says, 10 to 15 minutes at a time, depending on your tolerance. One other thing is when you're standing, from a circulation standpoint, it's your muscles need to contract to kind of move the blood back into circulation. So if you're just kind of standing stationary, they're not contracting, it's just harder for your body to kind of get that circulation going. So it is good to stand, just not standing for prolonged periods. So just changing it up frequently is recommended.
Very good. I think that's all we have for questions right now. Kelsey, thank you so much for being here. We really, really appreciate it.
You are
Welcome to the
so
virtual
welcome.
Dearborn campus. I hope
Thank
you come
you.
back
I
and
loved
visit
it.
us soon.
I will anytime. And
Thank
I
you,
will share
everyone.
with you at the
Yes.
end kind of some of those links that I have.
Yes, and anything you share with, if you want to share the presentation or resources, what we're planning on doing is, because this is being recorded, we're going to post the video up on the website along with any resources you provide.
Okay, yep, that sounds great. And if you guys have other questions, please reach out, and I'll include those emails on there as well.
Great.
So
Thank you
we're
so
here for
much,
you. All
Kelsey. Take care, everyone.
right,
We'll see
you're
you
welcome.
guys soon.